Welcome back to Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. I'm personal financial planner, columnist, and financial therapist Rick Kahler. Research tells us that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically. For nearly 4 decades, I've been helping people make better money decisions. So what makes my financial worldview different from most financial experts? I blend the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Good money decisions are not just about the money. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back for another edition. And last week I talked about financial dependency and how that is one of the financial disordered behaviors around money. And at the very end, I got into some thinking that what's it look like when someone who's financially dependent gets into a relationship with a financial advisor? And this is something I had never considered. I've never seen anything written on it. And so it was somewhat of a spontaneous exploration of this. And I had a little bit more time to think about this and kind of develop it. So that's what I want to venture into today. And I know a lot of you that listen to this podcast are financial therapists and mental health workers. And because this is unscripted and I try to keep this podcast kind of fresh and what's on my mind, and since I've never really read anything on this dynamic, please let me know if there is some modification needed in my conclusions. So I'll take a stab at this. So just a little bit of summary of last week. We talked that financial dependence shares a lot of similarity with what's called the dependent personality disorder. And again, to my IFS practitioner and therapist colleagues, I understand the sensitivity to diagnosing and making someone labeling them with a disorder. And at some point in time, I may put all of this into more IFS terms, but I'm going along with the research that we did in the past to help make this maybe a little bit more understandable. So with dependent personality disorder, there are 8 criteria that are outlined in the DSM-5, which is the Bible of mental health diagnoses, of which, for the most part, I reject in its application. And I explained this last time. And I just want to go over those 8 things, which will be the only repeat here from last week, one of the few things, just in case you didn't listen to last week. But somebody that suffers from financial independence would have difficulty making everyday financial decisions without a lot of excessive amount of advice and reinsurance from others. They need others to assume responsibility for the financial aspects of his or her life. They have real difficulty expressing financial disagreements with others because of fear of the loss of support or approval if there's a conflict. So they often will get along or go along to get along. They have difficulty initiating financial actions or doing financial tasks on their own. They go to excessive lengths to obtain financial reinforcement and support from others. We're not talking about getting support from others in your life, which is very important when it comes to finances. We're talking about excessive lengths. Feels uncomfortable or helpless when alone because of exaggerated fears of being unable to financially care for himself or herself. That would be like chronic financial worry. urgently seeks another financial professional as a source of care and support when a current relationship with a financial professional ends. And the key word there is urgently, like in a panic. And number 8 is unrealistically preoccupied with fears of being left to make financial decisions for himself or herself. Now, according to the DSM-5, if you can answer yes to 5 or more of those, you're probably financially dependent or have this personality. Now, financial dependency always makes perfect sense when we look deeper into a person's financial history, childhood wounding, and foundational beliefs. All right? This is not a diagnosis, disorder, mental health condition that you're just labeled with, that there's really no explanation exactly how it happened and there's no hope in overcoming it. It makes perfect sense. If you said, yes, I'm a financially dependent person. If I was talking with you and we could look deeper into your history and what your caregivers thought, felt, and believed about money, what the beliefs that you took on, it would make perfect sense that you would be dependent. You would have this. And we call these beliefs that we have about money scripts. We've talked a lot about that on the podcast, and they operate 24/7 and impact every financial decision that we make. The average person has about 50 to 200 of these money scripts. And the work of Dr. Brad Klontz and Dr. Sonia Britt Luder found that every money script generally belongs to 4 general categories. And we've talked about this. If this piques your interest, go back. I forget exactly which podcasts they are, but I had 4 podcasts dealing with these 4 general categories: money avoidance, money worship, money status, and money vigilant. And there's no one category that's better or worse than another. They just are. So there is a correlation that people that are financially dependent are high in money worship and money status money scripts. Now that doesn't mean that you can't be high in money vigilant or money avoidance and not be financially dependent or exhibit, the financial dependent personality. So those that are high in money worship scripts typically believe that things would get better if I had more money. More money will make me happier. Money would solve all of my problems. I recently worked with somebody that came out high in money worship. And she took a little bit of offense, like, wow, money worship, that sounds terrible. I don't worship money. Then when I explained to her that it just means you really believe things would get better if you had more money, or that more money would make you happier, she was able to say, okay, yeah, that's me, I get it. It really reacted poorly to the I worship money. Money status scripts equate one's net worth with their self-worth. And they include beliefs that people are only as successful as the amount of money that they earn. If something isn't considered the best, it's not worth buying. Like I said, net worth is equal to self-worth. So these are the money categories that will have a tendency to have this personality of becoming dependent upon other people for money. And I talked about last time that the research shows that people with dependent personality disorder, and so we're talking about being dependent financially, right, are drawn to people that are narcissistic, histrionic, borderline, or antisocial. And these people as a group are more erratic. They really are into drama. Histrionic is like really being theatrical and real big energy. They have a huge need to be in charge, and they really crave praise and high regard. So the DSM-5 classifies this group of personalities as what's called cluster B disorders, B as in boy. So if I refer to cluster B, it's these personalities. And I think the one that is probably most familiar to us would be the narcissist. And that may be the one that I bring out a little bit more. So you can see this person that really wants somebody to be in charge of them, right? Really wants someone to be taking care of them financially, is a match made in heaven for somebody who needs to be in charge and wants to be telling folks what they need to do and having them do it and be so appreciative of them and giving them a lot of praise and high regard. It's just a perfect fit. So I called it a match made in heaven because when we really look at the dynamics and what usually inevitably happens, it usually results in a descension into hell. So what really piqued my interest was, are financially dependent personalities drawn to financial advisors who exhibit cluster B personalities. And these would be financial advisors who view themselves as a financial guru or have that type of maybe almost cult following. Some do, but almost cult following, who have the answers. They have answers for their clients. They know what's going on. In market terms, they know what the market's going to do or what is called for right now. They have the answers in everything financial. And they typically can be charismatic, right? They also demand loyalty. They demand compliance to their recommendation. So they're totally willing to take charge of their clients' financial lives. I would guess that they are often market timers. Now, I have no research to support this, and I'm not saying everybody who is a market timer is a cluster B advisor, right? Because I think you could probably be passive and still be a cluster B advisor because you are just absolutely, totally rigid on that. But I'm thinking that they can tend to possibly be market timers because of the addiction to drama, right? And their need to be needed. And if timing the market is right and buying low and selling high and watching the monitors every day and making market moves are important, that's drama, right? You know enough about me to know that one of the mottos I use or my philosophy toward investing in the market is anxiety-free, which is the total opposite of drama. So this is what I see as this advisor. And I say that it's a match made in heaven because they're willing to assume the responsibility for their financial lives of their clients. They offer an unlimited supply of advice and reassurance. that I know what's going on. I'm here for you. And they're happy about this and want to take over the financial decision making for their clients. This is their value add. And they're probably more than happy. They probably require it, demand it, that they make the decisions in all aspects of their clients' lives, right? And the clients love this because it takes away the anxiety and the fears of the financially dependent client. So all the financially dependent client needs to do in return is to give the advisor complete compliance, adoration, and attention. So all's well until the client ever questions any recommendation or fails to follow through on advice that is given them. And I sense this is inevitable, right? Because if you think about the cluster B personality's inability to be open to new data, I want to say something I shouldn't say. Should I say this? Okay, I will. Once upon a time, I was listening to a program by Dave Ramsey. And I have written a couple of my books, put in there that he's brilliant when it comes to debt. And I heard him just going on about how terrible real estate investment trusts were. And these are mutual funds that invest in properties, that invest in the stocks of companies that invest in properties. And they have high fees and they're terrible, and good growth mutual funds have been far better, much better returns and lower fees. Well, this just wasn't the case. And about the third time I ever heard this, I sat down and ripped off a bunch of data showing the 1, 3, 10-year returns of these two asset classes. And at that particular time, the REITs had just obliterated the returns of the good growth mutual funds. And I sent those to him. And when I got no response whatsoever, I wrote a column on it saying, Dave's right on a lot of things, but he's wrong on this one. Well, what I got back was a cease and desist order that I had to take down everything I'd written about him in these columns because his name was trade copyrighted and I was breaching his copyright. Long story short, of course, that was not correct. And I remember one or two follow-up programs where Dave addressed my questioning of him, not by my name, but suggested anybody that would question him is a moron. That would be me. So what my point is that typically people in this cluster are just unable to be open to new data or research, or that might suggest some position that they were holding isn't accurate or isn't right. And I'm not saying that Dave Ramsey is a cluster B personality. I'm saying this is an example of what a cluster B person, the type of action that they may exhibit in addition to many others, right? So when they're questioned on any financial decision or a client doesn't do what they advise, they often resort to attacks on the person, gaslighting, which is questioning your sanity as a client, making you the blame of whatever is going on, manipulation, or trying to weaken or destabilize you. So when Now, if the client responds and gets back into line, okay, things are all right. There's probably still a little break in the relationship because of the insurrection. But if, however, you don't fall in line, or they start feeling they can't control you with these tactics, they'll often go into a rage, and this could be an outward outburst. It could be more of a inward, passive, aggressive type of a sulking, or followed by complete silence. And then this could be followed by even more erratic behavior. And this can be really, really upsetting to the financially dependent client. And of course, increase anxiety. And it just kind of depends, where this person is. If they're starting to see things like their portfolio is doing very poorly, or advice hasn't worked out, or something like this, of course, there's always a reason. There's always an excuse why it didn't. And again, it'll often come back to something that you as the client did or didn't do. Oftentimes, the best outcome of this is that the advisor just suddenly drops the client. And oftentimes when this is done, the client is labeled as non-compliant. That's the good news. The bad news is if they continue to engage with you, and life just gets crazy. And I suppose we could speculate about all of the crazy things that could happen when an advisor is kind of in this place of losing control of a client. And my point is there's a high probability that this relationship is going to end. This is certainly going to happen if a person starts recovering from financial dependence, right? One thing that I want to bring out is that when the split happens, is that you probably are not going to get any closure on the relationship. You may want to know what really went wrong. What really happened here? What did I do? It may not be as clear cut as I didn't follow their advice, or just trying to get some affirmation, some validation, explanation. And what is important for us to know is that these personalities are incapable of affirming or validating another person's frustration and pain. They are typically super low in empathy, and they just simply cannot and will never hear you. And this can be really, really frustrating. I've been in relationships that have ended in this manner and have never gotten closure. And it's been one of the hurtful things, because oftentimes these relationships can be very close, because this particular personality can also just shower the dependent personality with accolades too, as much as they need it, right? So when this happens, when the financially dependent client does leave, right? If they are still in the throes of their financial dependency, they will urgently, remember one of the 8 signs, they will urgently search for a new cluster B advisor, right? Who's going to take care of them and repeat the process all over again, unless the financially dependent person can get some help and begins to address the underlying money scripts, motivations, and wounding that is causing this urgency for financial dependency. So if you have recognized yourself or someone you love or a friend in all of this, probably the best thing that can happen is to seek out a financial therapist that can really begin to work with you to help you begin to understand what this motivation, what this need for dependency around money is. And again, as I said last time, we're not talking about a normal need to want to be taken care of, because we talked about the fact underlying wanting to be taken care of is a need for love, a need to be seen, a need to be heard, a need to belong. These are all normal human needs. We're talking about when there is a wounding to a point that there's a ton of anxiety, desperation, panic, and these hurtful financial behaviors that come out of this. It's like needing this on steroids to a point that it is no longer healthy for us. And we know that the parts of us that want this financial dependency have good intentions, that this worked at one point in time in our life. Like all money scripts, they work for a period of time when the circumstances are right. But when the play changes, when the circumstances change, all hell breaks loose. So that's what we're talking about. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that it's given you something to think about. I meant no disregard or harm to anyone in this, but I would be interested in any further expansions on my thoughts here. So thank you for listening. Take care, and I'll look forward to speaking to you next.
Thanks for joining me, Rick Kahler, for another episode of Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. This is where I combine the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Remember, every financial behavior, whether it appears illogical to you or others, makes perfect sense when we understand the underlying beliefs, feelings, and thoughts. Sign up for my weekly blog at financialawakenings.com. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode.